Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town Board of the Town of Austin regular meeting for Tuesday, September 8th, 2020. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. And thank you to our Highway Superintendent, Pete Connolly, for the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with a roll call.
Trustee Feldman?
Present.
Trustee Shaw?
Present.
Councilmember Meyer?
Present.
Councilmember Wiltshire? And Supervisor Levenberg?
Here I am. Okay, so up first this evening is a public hearing on local law to amend Chapter 47 of the Town Code residency requirements with respect to court attendance. Before I open up the floor to public comment on the second proposed local law for 2020, I wanted to explain a little bit about how we got to this point. Westchester County municipal agencies must follow civil service guidelines which are established by Westchester County government. All of our hirings must be approved through the Westchester County Department of Human Resources based on these guidelines. We've been particularly challenged when hiring court attendants, a very necessary and important position in our justice court. It is a part-time position and it's sort of floating, so we have multiple court attendants, and then they work for us based on their availability and based on our hours when we need them. And that's primarily our challenges have been due to residency requirements that are baked into the civil service law. Currently, we are only allowed to hire residents of the town of Austin who also satisfy the minimum qualifications for the position. The minimum job qualifications for court attendant are quite stringent and include at least several years experience in a law enforcement setting. We've posted for this position several times in the past and have unfortunately come up short every time, currently leaving the town with 2 vacancies in this position. The position of court attendant is more important now than ever before as the restrictions associated with the COVID-19 pandemic necessitate additional court personnel to control the occupancy of the courthouse, in addition to performing health screenings for visitors. Westchester County does allow the town to adopt a local law to expand the residency requirements for the position at its discretion. Town Council Adana has drafted the legislation under consideration tonight to allow the town to hire residents outside of the town of Austin, provided that they live in Westchester County or another county in New York State neighboring Westchester. Although we always prefer to hire Austin residents, and that's still in our proposed local law, we hope that this proposed legislation will help us cast the net a little wider for qualified candidates and, more importantly, help us get these positions filled. So with that, is there anyone here tonight that would like to address the board on this proposed local law? And seeing nobody from the public, I would ask if the town board, if the town council has any comments or any suggestions for any changes to the proposed local law. I will also open it up to Council Tom Madonna if she wanted to make any comments before we continue with the public hearing. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
When you said town council, I wasn't sure who you were referring to.
Sorry.
Yeah, just to reiterate, this came about due to the difficulties the town has had. The town does already have on the books the same types of exemptions for the building inspector as well as the justice court clerks. So the residency expansion was done to be consistent with those other positions to be residents of Westchester County or adjoining county, which was a suggestion made by the town board when we had a work session to discuss this previously. So it's just basically adding a new article to an existing chapter of the code to provide that expansion of residency requirements for the
To include the court
excuse me,
attendance.
for the court attendance as well. Since if there's no public comment and the board is comfortable with the law as drafted, I think the board would be able to close the public hearing tonight if you wanted to.
I'm comfortable with that. Is the rest of the board good with that?
Yes.
I'm going to take that for a head shake in this direction as a yes for Councilman Meyer.
Yes.
Councilman Shaw, I heard you. Councilwoman Feldman, I heard you. Okay, fantastic. So with that, could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, so I guess we get to move on to announcements with that.
We
Thank
can
you all.
we can put this on for resolution at your next legislative session on the 22nd.
Sounds like a plan. I like it. The more that we can help to get this passed, the more likely it is that we can get the court attendant positions filled, and that would be very helpful to our court. So, some announcements. I hope everyone enjoyed the long weekend and came back ready to rock and roll this week with teachers coming back and schools in various states of opening. As we come off of our Labor Day holiday yesterday, we just wanted to remember to thank and appreciate all of our workers who have increased protections in place as a result of the focus of organized labor who began protesting their horrific working conditions back in the late 1800s. Thanks to their efforts and those that continued from then through now, today those who work on our roads and bridges, in our schools and parks, in hospitals, supermarkets, on our power and telecom lines, and in our restaurants and throughout our workforce and so many more places, enjoy much healthier and safer work environments, living wages, and other workplace protections. We're grateful to all those who labor on behalf of us for the work they do every day to make our world safer, better, and richer. And now more than ever, we realize how critical to our own safety our essential workers indeed are. So on behalf of the town board of the town of Ossining, we say thank you. Following a large exposure to COVID-19 in neighboring Pleasantville at religious services at Holy Innocents Catholic Church 2 weeks ago, we are reminded that we are very much not in the clear yet from the threat of COVID-19. So please continue to wear a mask when you are in close proximity to others, or maybe you may be getting in close proximity, have your mask with you. Wash your hands and pay attention to how you are feeling to recognize any potential symptoms. If you were contacted by New York State contact tracers, yes, that is what will show up on your caller ID. Please do what you can to cooperate with their requests. They may ask for some personal information like your birthday and address to confirm your identity, as well as symptoms, recent activity, and interaction with others, and possibly support and any possible support you may need in receiving medical attention, sufficient food, or care for your children. They will not, however, ask for truly confidential information like your social security number, bank account, or medical records, so be wary of some of those red flags. Contact tracing is key in controlling and managing spread, so it's important to cooperate with this program. There have been stories of people refusing to cooperate, and that just does not help anyone, including yourself, including myself, including your loved ones, including my loved ones. Please also be reminded that New York State continues to add states to the list of places requiring a mandatory quarantine upon arrival back in New York. I know summer vacation season has unfortunately passed us by, but it remains important to monitor this list closely as it does change frequently based upon infection rates across the country. Election season is fast approaching. Do not wait to verify that you are registered to vote. Instead, please do so ASAP, because you must be registered by October 9th to participate in this year's general election. There are 3 ways to vote this year, and that is absentee voting. I know I just received an absentee ballot application in the mail today from Westchester County Board of Elections, and you may have also, or within the last couple days. You can also vote early, and that starts on October 24th, and you can vote at your usual polling place on Election Day, November 3rd. You can apply for an absentee ballot online at the New York State portal, and that's new. It's absentee.elections.ny.gov, which is so easy. Or you can also fill out your absentee ballot application that you received in the mail And you can also go on the Westchester County Board of Elections website to citizenparticipation.westchester.com to view the 17 locations where all registered voters in Westchester County can vote. That's right, you don't have to only vote in your own town. And that starts, as I mentioned, on Saturday, October 24th. The closest polling place for early voting for Ossining residents is the Community Center at 95 Broadway, but there are many more across the county that may be more convenient for some during the early voting schedule. Hours do vary by polling place, so be sure to check in advance. And finally, of course, you can vote in person on Election Day. Polling places will probably be shifting a bit, though, since emergency service facilities are not permitted to act as polling sites this year. Please be on the lookout for a postcard with your in-person Election Day polling site. It will also contain a personal QR code, one of those little funny-looking square things that readers can read. And you can bring that card with you to your polling place, and it will speed up the check-in process, because if the postcard has your name on it, not your spouse's, not your child's, not somebody else in your household, but your name on it, you bring it to the polling site, they can scan that and it'll make it a little bit easier. Regardless of your political position, I think that we can all agree this election is probably one of the most important of our lifetime. So, if not the most important, please do make a plan now to be sure your voice is heard this November. Okay, please also do not forget that election season is actually closer for some than others. For example, the Village of Briarcliff local elections are scheduled for next Tuesday, September 15th from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. at the WJV Community Center at 1 Library Road. Absentee ballots can still be requested in person by calling the village clerk at 914-941-4800. I believe the village offices are now open to the public as well, or you can apply online at www.briarcliffmanor.org. And is it time for my weekly census plug, Victoria Caffarelli? I think it is. The deadline to complete the census is rapidly approaching, although I think there is a chance that the courts may weigh in and allow the extension through the end of October. But as of now, it's at the end of this month, and we still have not met our 2010 numbers. Please be sure to take the time to fill out your census online at my2020census.gov. We did inch up about 0.2% over the weekend, and we're hovering near 68% response rate, leaving 32% of the town uncounted, and the towns and your money on the table. Spread the word. Now's the time to get your response in before it is too late. Do it. Finally, and most importantly, this Friday, September 11th, is the 19th anniversary of the terror attacks on September 11th, 2001. I know for any of us who were over a certain age in 2001, this date is impossible to forget. We all remember exactly where we were on that day and what was happening to us at the time, as many of us lost loved ones, neighbors, and colleagues. This year, due to COVID restrictions, memorials and remembrance ceremonies are going to look a little different. We have not yet received specific guidance from the governor regarding gatherings, so ceremonies are still restricted to 50 or fewer in attendance. Here in Ossining, the Ossining Fire Department will still be taking the lead on holding an annual ceremony, but attendance is limited to emergency personnel and elected officials only. The ceremony will be live streamed so the community can join in just from a little bit farther away than normal. We will share more information about how to virtually join us later this week via social media and our web blast. Do any of my board colleagues have any other announcements? And hearing and seeing none, I think we're going to move into our departmental reports for this evening. So up first, we have our highway superintendent and our Dale Cemetery superintendent, superintendent of both of those. Pete Connolly. Pete, I know you're wearing both hats. I think you said you wanted to start with cemetery this evening. Whatever order you want to go in, and we're going to be following that up with a report from our engineering team, which includes Andy Teese, Paul Fraioli, and also Dale Brennan, who's not necessarily going to be reporting, but she's there for moral support and financial support.
Always good to have.
Okay, so Pete, take it away.
Okay, hi everybody. On the cemetery side, we've had 57 interments so far this year. We're in the third year of our monument repair. That's ongoing as we speak. And he has about another week to go. And Dale Cemetery will be in very good shape as far as the monuments. And maybe next year we'll get a chance to look down at Sparta Cemetery, where there's about 20 stones that need repair. And we look forward to the restoration and the repairs of the superintendent's cottage next month. And the crew just continues to perform their regular maintenance duties there. On the highway department side, it seems like since my last report, a large portion of our work schedule was cleanup after 2 tropical storms. Brought down trees on Morningside Drive, Hawks Avenue, Hillcrest Avenue, River Parkway. Our emergency sewer lift station standby generators ran for 5 days at Deerfield and Fox Hill until electric service was restored. We continue to clean up trees and brush out on the street for 2 weeks after the storm, as the residents continue to bring out the damage from their own yards. We started today on year 2 of our guardrail replacement program. It's approximately 1,000 feet of guide rail, and we'll be working on Cedar Lane and Blue Lantern Road this year. Weather permitting, this should take about a week, 10 days. The road line striping will begin soon. I'm scheduled to meet with the vendor tomorrow morning. We had our 11 main sewer lift stations cleaned and vacuumed with our outside contractor last week. And phase 4 of the street sign and road sign replacement project continues. We just got our last batch of street signs came in today. And before you know it, leaf season will be here, as far at least we're thinking of it. And we're going to bring our leaf machines into the garage for servicing. And I know Andy Teese has a update on the generator replacement program situation at Whitetail and North State Road. I'd like to turn it over to Andy.
Okay, right before you turn it over to Andy, though, I just didn't, if anybody from the board had any questions, I just had one, which is that how did the 57 interments compare to last year at this time? Approximately.
All year we had 57 last year. So
right.
We are ahead in that regard. But the year before we had 89 all total. So it fluctuates all the time. You never know.
Just wondering because of COVID, if that, I know that you were very busy in sort of quick succession, it seemed at some point during the year. So
yes,
unfortunately, that's one of the outcomes of this pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Some of them, many of them were. Yes, that's true.
Right. Okay, so I mean, I think that, Paul and Andy both have related reports that relate to highway department. So why not, let's hear from you guys, and then we can ask more questions, unless anybody has any questions about cemetery before we get into that.
I guess I'll start. Good evening, Council. So the Dale Cemetery that Pete had already started to talk about, we've received approval from you guys, from the council, and from the supervisor for the bid recommendation for the rehabilitation of the building. We're going to be setting up a pre-construction meeting the 3rd week in September. I've reached out to the architect and make sure that we have all the AIA documents and that it starts the way it's supposed to start, paperwork-wise. The contractor is set to start that project the 1st week in October. We did give them a call, and he is on board with that. I know that the supervisor's office is just signing the contract, so we're good to go. Everything seems to be lining up correctly. The generator replacement project for the sewer lift station. So we've received full approval, which was real important, from Westchester County Department of Health. They wanted to make sure that what was designed is exactly what's being installed, because it needs to meet the correct parameters. So we just received approval from that like a week and a half ago, but we will need a resolution authorizing from the council authorization to bid. And then once we have that authorization to bid, then we will set bid dates. And I'll coordinate with Victoria Caffarelli about that, because when we set the bid dates, we have to make sure the electrical engineer has all the drawings ready. And as soon as that's advertised and they pick up the drawings, they have a 3-week turnaround between advertising and bidding. So Pete had a little bit of a concern that, can we go through the winter? I think it'll be fine, because I don't think there's going to be much underground work. There's not much conduit work. I think it's going to be kind of an easy replacement. Biggest thing that we have to be careful of is making sure that we have pumping capabilities when these generators are taken out of service for the day, that if there's a power failure, we can still operate the sewer lift stations. That's kind of it on our end. Paul's going to talk about the water side and everything with McCarthy. Any questions? Okay.
Andy, I'd like to, if you remember back in June, we mentioned the air bubbler for Mystic Point. I don't know if the board would like to still consider that. I think it's a good idea. At Mystic, the lift station is always, it's the first one to jam up with silt, grease, and all makes our pump and repair company recommends this wet well mixer, and try to eliminate a lot of those problems. I proposed it in June. It's an additional $4,945. I think it would be a good idea if they would like to include that with the generator replacement.
I agree. I don't know exactly how much was borrowed for, and I know Dale probably has those numbers, but it's definitely something I would really think it's a good idea, because it'll prevent the clogging of your pumps, and I think in the long run, it's peace of mind that it'll stop any issues of possibly overflowing that station. So let's see how it works in that station, if the board is willing to do it, and then you can go from there. I know the village is thinking about doing it. We only have one sewer lift station down by the river, and I think we're going to move that way ourselves. We've upgraded some of our pumps recently because of the same type of situation. Your pumps are submersible pumps, and the modifications can't be made as easily. So the bubbler system does seem the way to go.
Sounds like it makes sense. Anybody else from the board? No? Okay.
I would go with the recommendation.
Jackie? I'm sorry, Councilwoman Shaw?
Sounds like it makes sense.
Councilman Meyer?
Agreed.
Okay. So if we can add that into the, I guess the bid?
Is it something, I thought it was just we had to issue a separate purchase order for, but Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's something we necessarily need to bid for. If the board is amenable to it, you can face with finance, good here, and if so, then we can issue the purchase order to move forward with it. I don't think it's necessarily something the board needs to take specific action.
I agree with that. Yeah, I would. You can take it out of the same borrow possibly, but I wouldn't add it to the actual bid specs for the generators.
Okay.
As long as the money's there, it's worth doing.
Okay, I was misunderstanding. No
No
problem.
problem.
Okay. So we want to move over to McCarthy?
My turn?
Yeah.
Good evening, Supervisor Board. So I would like to talk about two projects with you this evening that I've been discussing with the supervisor and the highway superintendent. But just as a quick refresher, as you know, the village and town put out annual bid documents every year, and they are inclusive of paving and concrete work. And with that in mind, we've accomplished the paving and necessary pre-paving concrete work on a few roads last year. up around Studio Hill Road and Haymont Terrace, I believe. At that time, we were considering going further along with some paving this year, and then COVID struck us all, and we thought it best to put all capital expenditures of this size on the back burner. But in discussions with the superintendent and the supervisor more recently, and analyzing budgets, which I think is why Dale's on the line for the crutch that she always offers us with expenditures, we have decided for your consideration this evening going forward with the full length pavement of Morningside Drive as a capital paving project utilizing existing annual bid contract documents, including Morningside Drive from Chappaqua Road all the way to the town limits in Newcastle. So before you decide on that, I want to get into some of the details on how we derive the estimated cost for that. We met with the annual bid contractor, we being the highway superintendent and I, to discuss the condition of Morningside Drive and what we would like to see as an end product. As you know, the superintendent has been taking care of the stormwater facilities in that area, and more recently has checked all the catch basins and et cetera in that area to see their condition, to see if there was any pre-paving work that needed to be done. And he thinks they're in pretty good shape. So that's a good thing. So we don't really have any costs associated with anything that might have been neglected over the years. They're all in pretty good shape. So we think that the recommendation for that road is a milling operation to take off some of the surface imperfections, and then replacing that with the equivalent 6F top course bituminous concrete blacktop for the full length, which is it's just under 7,000 linear feet. But if we incorporate the intersection when we do the work and some of the tie-in streets that we were discussing with the superintendent, where Morningside passes some of the cul-de-sacs, it's going to come out to about 7,000 linear feet. That road is approximately 25 feet wide in most points, and any collateral curb work or any right-of-way work is going to be undertaken by in-house forces to save the costs there. More specifically, the curbs and any grading work that is a byproduct of the paving. So using the annual bid contract documents, we estimate approximately 4,300 tons. And if you shake that out, if you extend that using the unit price items in the contract, and you add the cost of milling a square footage of that length and width, and the tack coat that goes along with that, which we'd like to use on this road, the project's going to cost roughly $600,000 to $650,000 for the paving facet. Then there is additional costs, but minor compared to that, of the line striping, which is also another annual bid contract that we have on the town and village annual bid contract documents. But based on what we're looking to do, which is a double yellow line in most areas, because superintendent and I agree that that's necessary on a road used as much as Morningside is used. Plus there's a lot of blind curves there and what have you. So it's really a safer thing to have. And stop bars. And then another effort to enhance the safety would be something that you've seen on some of the roads that are more highly traveled, which is the white fog lines along just inside the curb lines on each of those roads. It's not a very wide road, so it would be tough to properly implement something like a bicycle lane, which you all did over on Hawks. I think Hawks was about 30 feet across. Superintendent can correct me if I'm wrong there, but it does allow for a shoulder and a more appropriate location for a bike lane. That wouldn't prevent us from share the road signage and anything else that might be supportive of that. But for argument's sake, we couldn't construct a formal bike lane there because of the present width of the road. So that's the first project for your consideration, which doesn't have a water component that Andy alluded to. It's just a straight paving project. And we estimate that to be about 650,000 for the paving contractor, and then maybe another 15,000 for line striping. So we think we can do Morningside for less than $700,000. And in earlier discussions with the finance supervisor's office and the superintendent, we believe that based on the existing fund balance of, I think, 3.5 million, that it would be prudent to pay for this project out of fund balance versus putting it out to the debt market and incur that on debt service.
I just wanted to add that we also have about $100,000 in CHIPS funds through the state. And also we are anticipating, based on our timing, if we could get it through in time, that we can use about $120,000 of multimodal funding that was offered through Assemblywoman Sandy Galiff's office. So that would take down what we would need to use from fund balance by the tune of about $220,000 if all can fall into place quickly.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. Yeah. And regarding the CHIPS, we, as I'm sure the town did, the village also received a letter recently from the state DOT through the governor's office that the CHIPS monies were going to be extended to the local communities. They weren't going to hold those back, which was a discussion in the earlier stages of COVID.
Correct. So are there any questions from the town?
Paul, in your opinion, is this a fiscally responsible thing to do? Is this going to save us money in the long run?
I think so. I think it's something. It's definitely a road worthy of repaving. There's not an extensive amount of subsurface work that needs to be done. That's why I mentioned earlier the stuff that we did in advance with the highway superintendent. I think getting that much road paved, which, essentially 1.5 miles of road paved for that price is a good bang for your buck. I think it's a widely traveled road. And I think the road is in a condition that warrants paving for sure. And I think the way we're going to do it, it's going to have a very long life expectancy and probably a prudent decision at this time.
And do we know the last time this road was paved? I feel like, Pete, you might have that information.
I don't know, but we spent so much time there in the spring filling potholes and just pothole after pothole and tons of blacktop. So it is starting to add up in costs in that regard too.
I just want to add one thing from my days working in for Assemblywoman Galiff. Which, by the way, I think that a lot of that, a lot of the money she distributes to all of her municipalities. I just wanted to mention that one of the things I learned from DOT is that they tend to focus on repairing the roads that are not in the worst of the worst condition, because they're so expensive to repair. And if you keep up with your roads and don't let them fall into that horrible situation, then you're in much better shape long-term going forward. So DOT, like, even though, a lot of the roads really need a lot more work than others, they tend to focus on the ones that are in less bad condition. So based on what we're hearing from Mr. Fraioli and Mr. Connolly, I would say that, we should focus on this very well-traveled road. Don't forget our Parks Department garages on this road, so they have access up and down this road all the time to get to all of the other projects that they work on. I know that there's a nursery school down this road, which gets a lot of traffic, and a lot of people unfortunately use it for a cut through. I'm sure Councilwoman Shaw can talk about her use of the road because she lives not too far away, but it is literally access, that can get you to the other side of North State Road. It can get you to to 9A, to Route 100, all of those things. If you aren't on, which I probably shouldn't tell people about, because if you haven't discovered it yet, we don't really want you to, but it is a heavily trafficked road. That's one of our, I would say, more major byways, and it really needs attention. I do want to just comment that, I do know that our neighbors in the village, both villages, haven't stopped paving their roads because of COVID. And I think, again, that I think infrastructure projects are critical to continuing to keep our workforce in place and working, and that's how we keep our economy going. So I think for us to shy away from doing essential infrastructure projects is, you know, kind of penny wise, kind of foolish, in my personal and humble opinion.
My question to the engineer is it essential?
I think so. I think I'm going to jump on the segue that the supervisor just offered. And I could tell you two things. One, jumping back to the road being a cut through. And
No, Paul, you had answered my question. I thank you.
No, I know, but I do want to build on it a little bit, though, because I do have to talk about another project, and I think it's going to be a good tie-in to what I'm going to talk about next with McCarthy. But before I jump to that, I did want to say one of the things I went over with the superintendent is, because we know it's such a large cut through, and once you do newly pave a road, it tends to, you know, get people more comfortable with their right foot a little bit. So we are, that's why we were promoting the use of the fog line, because appropriately placed, it could really act as a little bit of a traffic calming measure. And if we, you know, have the right demarcations on the road, we could hopefully keep people doing the speed limit there best as we can with some properly painted lines, by narrowing the lanes, if you will, appropriately, but still narrowing them. But the segue I was going to jump on was, I told you before, that's about a 7,000 linear foot road. So if I could, I do agree that it's worthy of paving because of how widely it's used and how often it's used. But segueing to McCarthy Drive on a road that's had no attention, but has been a town road technically and now formally for some time now, that's been dealt with patchwork after patchwork after patchwork. You're going to see when I go over the budget for McCarthy what happens when you don't do it right the first time and then you just let things build and fester, right? So hopefully, Councilwoman Feldman, that you see my point there with why I think McCarthy is a good project. But going into McCarthy, this has a lot of facets to it that's more than just a milling and a paving. McCarthy Drive, I think, kind of created itself as a road during the construction of the houses there off of Stormytown Road, starting maybe 50 or 60 years ago up into maybe 20 or 30 years ago. And it's a cul-de-sac off of Stormytown. I think most of you know it, but for the public that might be listening now or later, it's not a widely used road, so it really didn't get the attention. But now it's to the point where essentially it's in disrepair. So the scope for McCarthy Drive is essentially a reconstruction of every component of the road, including all the subsurface drainage utilities, none of which exist now and weren't built when what was originally a right-of-way, which became a driveway, which became a public road. That all has to be designed and installed from Stormytown all the way to the cul-de-sac and the easement that exists at the end of McCarthy Drive, where it connects via easement to Incognito. That drainage continues through Incognito all the way out to Whitehall. It includes ripping up all of the existing road and creation of a subbase, or placement of a subbase and the grading that goes along with that, then a binder course, and then a top course. So it's more than just a top course paving, which we were doing on, proposing to do on Morningside. In addition to that, it includes the replacement of about 1,800 linear feet, and this is what Andy referenced earlier, 1,800 linear feet of water main. That's going to be in the scope of this capital project. However, there's going to be an offset payment from the village for that specific line item, where the village water fund will fund the water main facet of the town's capital project. That's how it's detailed in the existing IMA for our water system. That's estimated at about $700,000. And then there's concrete curbs and the top course pavement and the interface with all of the residents there. And the estimate right now for that project is approximately $2.5 million. And because of that, and because of the state of the bond market where it is today, we thought that that is prudent to go out in the very early part of 2021 for our borrow and to bid the project at the same time. And hopefully the bid comes within that budget. And at that time, with the bands in place, we can go out and award the contract and do that work starting in the spring of 2021. Before you comment on that, I will tell you that this was something that when we first talked about it was going to be considered this year, but again, because of COVID, we pushed it off till next year. But to take advantage of the downtime, we've been visiting with the residents as best as we can. I think there's 30 some odd homes that are, that interface with the project, including a couple on Incognito and then the 2 on Stormy Town, which, are kind of on McCarthy. I think I've talked to about 20 residents so far out of that total. Some might not be interested in talking to me, and that's why they haven't called back. And then some we will get to eventually. But by the time the project, before the project breaks ground, if you go forward with it, we will have interface with every resident so they know exactly what's happening on their street and also right outside their property, because the property does interface with the project for the entire lane.
So it's my understanding that this road was a private road built by the developer originally. That's why it doesn't have the proper width and drainage and everything else. And then the developer defaulted that part of the property to the, on the taxes, so the town became owner. Is that how that happened? Am I wrong?
I don't think you're right, but I'm going to ask Council Tomadonna.
I know we ran, this has been going on for years now, and I haven't looked at it recently, but I know a title report was done, and it showed that the town was the owner of the road. So it may have been that for a while the town didn't realize they were. And then when it was brought to the attention, it was relatively recently, and it was already in this condition. I can go back and look, but I think we're looking at like 2017 or 2018 when we first started looking at this. So
no, that's what I remember from back then, I thought.
Correct.
Just why it was never originally built with the proper drainage or proper width and things like that. I thought that was why we're starting from such a poor starting point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is why. Just
one comment on the width. Width is something that really gets vetted in the planning board by whoever's reviewing it at the time. And if it actually went through the formal subdivision process, which I don't think this did, but just not all roads are requested of a developer to be the 30 feet with a 10-foot right-of-way on either side. The right-of-way existed, and I think you probably have that 50-foot right-of-way, which was really the premise for meeting with all the residents, because some of the project is happening within that right-of-way. But after the preliminary meetings we had with the residents, finding what they did and didn't want, we still didn't want to go out and build a 30-foot wide road. It's really not necessary, particularly there for a cul-de-sac. The only thing that you typically look for in the subdivision process on a cul-de-sac is the appropriate fire apparatus abilities. So you can accommodate that with parking restrictions. And the cul-de-sac itself, which I don't know what the town code says, I would maybe defer to Christie, but it probably mirrors the village's code, where you need a 50-foot radius and a 60-foot right-of-way there for the appropriate turnaround for emergency vehicles. So we can't accommodate that here because we don't have the ability without doing some type of property takeover, and we didn't want to do that. So we're going to try to handle it with what we call a hammerhead, or basically like a paved area at the end, which would allow for hopefully safe 3-point U-turns for larger vehicles. But we told the residents going into this that we're going to have minimal impact on their existing private properties, and I think we're doing that fairly well with how it's laid out now, including where all the drainage is going to be placed underground, where catch basins are going to be placed, the interfaces with everybody's driveway, saving some larger specimen trees and such, and trying to limit as best as we can the impact on where all these stormwater retention systems sit, including the one that impacts the 2 residents incognito who we're actually meeting with hopefully in the next couple of weeks with the engineers, so they can understand what's going to happen on their property, because that's an easement for the utility, but it's still technically their property. So when we're finished, we really do want to do a restoration of that area with, sympathetic to the fact that we're doing it in something that's existing woodlands in someone's backyard. So we want to try to help them maintain their privacy and then the woodland aesthetic, but at the same time, we have to maintain our access to the easement, which will house our stormwater system and presently houses the water main that connects this to incognito.
And also, will that hopefully end up being an improvement? Because I think they have a lot of drainage issues right now as a result, right? So
For sure.
That's
everything we're doing is going to be significant drainage improvements for everybody on McCarthy. It's going to have a beneficial impact to people on, is it Knollwood? That's parallel to McCarthy, just down Stormytown. Knollwood,
Yes.
is that?
It is.
And then Incognito, which is, also, going to be impacted by the drain line being installed all the way down their road, but we didn't want to dump all the stormwater into the Incognito system. We're bypassing the entire system, going all the way down Incognito and running it into the basin on Whitehall.
White Birch.
White Birch, yeah. So it's a big project, significant cost, but again, well worth it. The road is, the residents are, I think, really in the large majority of them are in favor of this work happening. I think it's going to be a great benefit for the homeowners, not just the aesthetic, but the condition of their road. And I think it's going to be a nice project when we're done.
All right. And I know that at some point that our prior highway superintendent had reached out to Con Edison to ask about gas line installation and didn't get enough interest at the time. And I don't even think it's an option anymore because there was that gas line moratorium. I don't know if that's changed or not, but hopefully there is any other utility work when Con Ed comes back in and starts tearing up new roads.
Yes, we do not love that, but sometimes it happens. But for them to have a reason to do that here for their gas lines, it would have to be, because they also have underground electric lines there.
Yeah, I don't think they have I don't think there is a gas line. I don't think there is any gas.
There is no gas line, so yeah.
Okay.
And the moratorium is still on.
Okay.
For gas. Yeah.
Thanks. All right, fantastic. So are there other questions from town board about this project? And is there any comment from our wonderful comptroller? Did you want to say anything?
I did just want to add, it is smart to use fund balance for the Morningside Drive. When I actually looked at the fund balance numbers for TOV, where normally, they'll say 20 to 30% of fund balance is healthy. We actually have 101.61% of fund balance in TOV fund. So this is exactly what you should use it for, capital improvements. And it'll look good to, use our money well and not borrow and incur costs to do that. So
absolutely. Give it back to the taxpayers.
Yep.
Infrastructure
Mm-hmm.
improvement.
Exactly.
One quick question, Paul, is there anybody who's very upset about their ornamentals on the road? Or have you really gotten through to everybody?
I could tell you the biggest concerns I had was for the neighborhood as a whole was my druthers to get rid of the 2 entry statement details that are on the interface with Stormytown, because we wanted to get appropriate entrance into Stormytown with sight distance issues. But everyone I talked to can't wait for those things to disappear because they were never maintained and they're basically a blight.
Interesting.
And then there was something, there was a couple of landscaping details that I thought were going to be an issue, but one resident actually said, I'm glad that you're going to remove those. I don't want you to replace them. So that's a good thing. That, makes it a little easier when we're going through with our work. And there was a couple of trees that we were able to save, but some are questionable because we're going to be excavating in the area of the drip line, and that always is a concern. But in talking with some of the residents, for lack of a better way of putting it, they wouldn't mind if some of those trees didn't survive the construction process. So we're going to be as, mindful of that as we can, but where they do get in the way, where there's a question whether it's really worth saving, I could tell you that the 3 or 4 times that really occurs, every one of the residents said they have no problem with that tree not being there when we're done.
Okay, thank you.
I think this is going to be, not that you asked this, but I think Pete's guys are going to have a much better go of it for the maintenance of that road now too, because not only is it going to be smoother, but it's not going to have any ice buildup or snow buildup because all of that is hopefully going to drain during snow melt. And they're going to have defined curves and defined lanes. And right now, if you're driven to the end of McCarthy, you don't have anything but gravel and item 4. And that's very tough to maintain. And, people do live back there, and it's not something that I know that his folks like to maintain in the condition that it's in. And I think the way they're going to be able to maintain it in the winter is going to be orders of magnitude better than what it is now.
And the roads next to it will be improved as well, Knollwood and Cedar Lane, the drainage?
Well, I think the houses on Knollwood, the ones that back up to McCarthy, are going to see the benefit of collecting the stormwater. The road itself, I don't think is really inundated during a storm, with the exception of maybe at the very end of it where some of the drain swales actually come down to the catch basin on the cul-de-sac of Knollwood. There might be some surcharging going on there. I've never really seen it. I would defer to Pete there, but I think it's really that residence versus the road itself. The one, what was the other one? You said Incognito?
Cedar Lane.
Cedar Lane, yeah, same thing. Cedar Lane has a very, Cedar Lane and McCarthy have high water tables over there because we did a stormwater project on Cedar Lane not that long ago. Maybe it was that long ago. I don't know. But we caught a lot of water bleeding off of the hill.
Right.
And
I remember that.
It used to shoot out of a lot of the pipes that used to come out of those people's yards. And a lot of that, could be some ground and surface water mixing when it gets so soaked up there and there's no place for it to really go. So I think a lot of that's going to get alleviated with everything we catch on the street and shoot it out to White Birch.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? A lot of good discussions tonight about some big projects. So, okay, hearing none. Thank you, everybody, very much for your reports. Very significant, and for all your hard work going into this. We appreciate it. And if there are any other questions, I know you guys are around to help us get answers to them if you don't have them yourselves. Again, we appreciate all your work supporting the town with your many hats. And with that, I'm going to just ask, I skipped over liaison reports on the agenda, if there were any liaison reports. And if not, then is there anybody here who has public comment on agenda items only? We will get to general visitor recognition at the end of the meeting, but right now we're just looking for a comment on agenda items. And seeing and hearing none, I will ask that we move into our board resolutions. And our Deputy Town Clerk, Martha Kudisaka, if you could take us through.
Okay, so approval of minutes, regular meeting, August 25th, 2020. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Austin hereby approves the August 25th, 2020 meeting minutes of the regular meeting as presented.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay, I can't hear you, but Councilwoman
Second.
Feldman seconded. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
Approval of voucher detail report. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austin hereby approves the voucher detail report dated September 8th, 2020 in the amount of $229,669.92.
I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
Approval call for public hearing, local law to amend chapter 200 of the town code zoning to create beekeeping regulations in the town of Austin. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austin hereby calls for a public hearing in the matter of local law number 3 of 2020 to be held at 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020, and be it further resolved that pursuant to the governor's executive orders 202.1 and 202.15 and subsequently extended, this public hearing will be held via video conferencing only, with the information to participate in the public hearing to be duly noticed and circulated in accordance with the requirements for noticing public hearings.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So second.
So we look forward to opening the public hearing on our third proposed local law of 2020 to allow beekeeping in the town of Ossining in the safest, of course, ways. And we're looking forward to hearing from the public on how to best develop this legislation to meet the needs of the town. And thank you go out to our planner, Valerie Monastre is not here this evening, and also our council, Tom Adana, for their work in drafting this proposed legislation. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thanks.
Appointment seasonal intermediate clerk. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austin reappoints Dana White Austin to the position of seasonal intermediate clerk at an hourly rate of $25 to be paid for by a local government records management improvement fund grant from the New York State Archives effective September 2nd, 2020.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So Dana White and in the next resolution, Shannon Riley have been helping us for the past year or so to get our records retention policies followed and in order, so we get our records all cleaned up. And a big shout out to Victoria Caffarelli for basically helping us to get the grant and then follow through on this at the beginning. And now our clerk, Suzanne Donnelly, has taken over the oversight of this, which is great. We received an extension of the grant through the end of this year, so we look forward to welcoming Dana and Shannon back this month to help us wrap up this very important project before the end of the year. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Appointment seasonal intermediate clerk. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austin reappoints Shannon Riley Austin to the position of seasonal intermediate clerk at an hourly rate of $25 to be paid for by local government records management improvement fund grant from the New York State Archives effective September 2nd, 2020.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Temporary beer/wine/cider permit for facilities rental, September 27th, 2020. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austin hereby authorizes the supervisor to sign the landlord authorization form for the New York State Liquor Authority for a temporary beer, wine, cider license for the Austin Volunteer Fire Department, which has filed an application to rent the pavilion in Ryder Park in the town of Austin on Sunday, September 27th, 2020, and be it further resolved that the applicant will provide proof of insurance and the letter of indemnity to the town in a form acceptable to council to the town.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So from time to time, an organization or family will rent one of our pavilions and request to serve alcohol for their attendees, requiring approval by the town board. Of course, limited right now to 50 attendees or fewer. The Austin Fire Department has requested to rent the pavilion at Ryder Park later this month and serve alcohol to attendees. We're happy to facilitate our dedicated first responders' enjoyment of a relaxing afternoon in the park. They definitely deserve it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, going on to correspondence to be received and filed. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austin hereby accepts the following correspondence: town planning board minutes for July 1st, 2020 and July 15, 2020. Town Zoning Board transcript for August 17th, 2020, and Bethany Arts resolution for August 17th, 2020.
Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Monthly reports. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Austin hereby accepts the following monthly reports for the month of August 2020. Town Highway, GE Helicopter, Tax Receiver, Town Clerk's Office, and Town Supervisor.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful. And so we get to our visitor recognition. Is there anybody here who would like to be heard by the board on any topic at all? You have 4 minutes to speak. Going once. Going twice. Okay. Thank you very much. So with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn to executive session for personnel, advice of counsel, and contracts.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So next week's meeting will actually be our first virtual town hall style meeting, which we normally hold at the Austin Public Library. This time it will be virtual, and we will be discussing with the public an update on our comprehensive plan and how we plan to engage the public in the process starting now and moving forward. We're continuing to hold these meetings over Zoom since it continues to be safer and also still widely accessible to the public at the same time. As of September 4th, the governor has extended yet again the executive order allowing us to hold these meetings virtually for another month. Depending on where we are this time in October with the pandemic, we will see if we are in fact going to continue in this fashion for longer. So stay tuned for that. Today was the first day of school for students in the Briarcliff Manor School District, and tomorrow is the first day of school in the Austin schools. We send our best wishes to all students, teachers, administrators, and all of their families for a great start to the new school year, a back to school like none other ever experienced in our lifetimes. Have a great night, everyone, and we will see you all next week. Thank you. Bye. Bye.